We can't forget, though, the massive Khufu Pyramid, which was one of the first great pyramids of Giza. Whoops. Khufu was the son of Snefru, and it seems that he didn't want to be outdone by his daddy when it came to building stuff. So he had his pyramid built. When completed, it was about 480 feet tall and took about 10 to 20 years to complete. There's an estimated 2.3 million blocks, each weighing as much as 80 tons, depending on the size of the stone and where the stone was placed. That's up to 160,000 pounds of stone each. That's a lot of weight. It's believed that those who would have worked on this would have needed to place about 12 stones every day, 24/7, if they were going to be able to get this pyramid done in about the 20 years it took. That's a lot of workers. That's a lot of work. If you're not impressed yet, think of it this way. This was built around 2540 BC. It was the largest man-made structure in the world for 1,300 years. That means it was the tallest man-made structure until the year 1300 AD. Okay, I think that's pretty impressive when you think that they did this without having any cranes, machinery, any type of heavy tools like that. They did all of this by hand with manual labor. I think that's pretty impressive for this thing to have been considered the largest man-made item for that long. In the foreground here, we also see the Sphinx, which is believed to be guarding the pyramid. Evidence suggests that it was actually built by Khufu's son, Khufra, after his death. After Khufu's death. Yes, this is Khufu's pyramid. No, there isn't a transformer in it. Sorry, folks. So, why do we care so much about the pyramids? Well, because they remain a mystery to most people. And people love a mystery. Just think of all the money that's made from ancient Egyptian architecture in Las Vegas by itself. Here we see kind of an image of that with the Sphinx in the front and Khufu's pyramid in the back as the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas. So far, we've covered Egypt's geography, the pyramids, and a little bit about some of the people who built the pyramids. And now we're going to go on to Egyptian culture. Those that ruled Egypt were called pharaohs, and these pharaohs ruled absolutely. The pharaoh stood at the center of Egyptian culture, government, and religion. These people were gods. When you have a person who is in total control of the government, and his rule is based upon religious authority, we call that a theocracy. The pharaoh was not the only god, though. No, he was one of a great many gods. When you have a religion of multiple gods, that is known as polytheism or polytheistic. Poly is the prefix meaning many, and theistic or theism means the belief in a deity or some god. Among some of these other gods was the god Re, who was the sun god, Osiris, who was the god of the dead, and Isis, who was the goddess who represented being an ideal mother and an ideal wife. So if there is a god for the dead, there must be some belief, or they must have some belief about death itself. Ancient Egyptians believed in an afterlife and built burial chambers and tombs that would act as their home in their afterlife. Upon their death, if they could afford it, people would be buried in some sort of tomb and go through the process of mummification. Mummification is simply the process by which they embalm and dry the corpse to prevent decay. Archaeologists are still finding mummies throughout different parts of the world where the corpses are still mostly intact because of the process of mummification. Ancient Egyptians were not the only ones who did this, but they are one of the oldest cultures to do it. Here we see what a mummy looks like about 2,000 years after his death. You can see that although decaying has occurred, a person can get an idea of what this person might have looked like thousands of years ago. And actually it was about 3,000 years, not 2,000 years. My correction there. Yes, you can't get away from thinking about those mummy movies. Sorry, we're not going to watch it in class, though you're probably wishing we were. Sorry, not going to happen. To understand how a society was structured in ancient Egypt, we can break it down into this chart. We see similar charts like this in the future, so keep an eye out for those as well. Here, we see 6 different levels of authority. On the top, of course, is the pharaoh, who has complete and total power. As we go down, we'll see the different levels from the highest to the lowest. The group with the most people is at the bottom. I always find it interesting that those at the bottom consist of the largest group of people, but have the least amount of power. Obviously, the pharaoh doesn't know everything, though sometimes he may act like it. But he does have a small group of people known as viziers. If you look at the word closely, you can actually see that it looks like another word used to describe someone whose job it is to help. Maybe the word advisor? Where do you think that word came from? Okay, level 2 of this pyramid of Egyptian society. Viziers is the same thing as advisor. That's where the word comes from. What made ancient Egypt society so unique in its social structure was that a person was not necessarily locked into their social class. Laborers or even slaves could rise out of their social class into a higher class. It might have been easy, but it certainly was permitted. Another interesting part to their society was that women held many of the same rights as men. They could own property, have inheritance rights, and things along those areas. Heck, a woman can even propose marriage to a guy. Often, though, women would get married between the ages of 14 and 16. And if granted a divorce, they were entitled to 1/3 of the couple's property. One thing that I want to point out, though, about women being able to marry at such an early age is that in many societies throughout history and even today, a woman is considered grown when she is able to bear children, which is about 14 years old. Similar with the guys. However, according to Stephanie Kunz, who wrote Marriage, a History in 2006, she comments that it is a way of getting in-laws, making alliances, and expanding the family labor force. So it's not just about the kids, according to this author. On to another topic. I spoke briefly about it in the introductory slides, where we spoke of the Egyptians being one of the first cultures to record their history. They did this through a system known as hieroglyphics. These were simple carvings of symbols and pictographs. Today, we use a combination of letters and numbers put together to create ideas that we call words. Back then, symbols stood for the ideas instead of words. Okay, a little different. They used symbols for ideas, where today we use words and letters. Not only did they come up with the system of writing, they also came up with the first portable writing surface, which was made out of papyrus reeds. A reed is simply just a long piece of grass that grew along the shores of the Nile. They were able to take that papyrus reed and create a type of manufacturing of it, taking its elements and making it into a type of paper. It's very good paper, however, that over time it would dry out and crumble really easily. We can also thank the Egyptians for the 365-day calendar, and they also were the first to come up with the idea of a 30-day calendar. For being dead for about 4,000 years, these people must have been pretty smart and observant of the celestial sky. The list goes on. Even Egyptian doctors knew about the human pulse, they knew how to set broken bones, and even used surgery in some cases to cure or to fix medical issues. So these people, considering they're over 3,000 years old, they weren't stupid. They learned a lot of things and were able to do a lot of things based on what they learned about the human body, the stars, and using the river to help them as well in order to survive. The takeaway here is that the Egyptians had accomplished something that no one ever had done up until that time. They were able to really, truly build the first unique and united empire on the planet. So this ends our lecture today, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure that you complete the review questions that follow this slide to check your understanding of the materials. If you have any questions about what was covered during this presentation, please feel free to let me know or check out any of the other resources that can be found on the SLC site. Looking ahead to our next lecture, we'll be discussing the New Kingdom, which include names like King Tut, Hutepchup, and my favorite, Ramses II. Until then, have a great day, and remember to stay awesome. See you later.